Hi guys, today we are talking about the very big and upsetting topic of reactivity in service dogs in training. Now I say upsetting because if this is something you're dealing with your own dog, then you know how kind of big a topic this is and how frustrating and scary and emotional that this topic can be. So today what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about reactivity in service dogs, what it is, why it's a problem, how to get help is what I really want to talk about today, is how this topic of reactivity or how this impacts a service dog's training. And we get a lot of questions about this. I get a lot of questions about dogs who are barking and or lunging at other people and other dogs, generally out in public, but sometimes it's even just going for walks around the block, things like that. And I get a lot of questions about whether or not a dog should be washed out. And both of these are like huge topics that really require the help of somebody in person who can see your dog and help you with the individual. This is a very individualistic type of thing. It's very different for each dog. So what I wanted to talk about today is some bigger picture type stuff that can help you make some decisions, help you get some help, and point you towards some resources that can really help you guys with this. Now, reactivity is a big issue for service dogs. I see it a lot, and I have worked with hundreds of reactive dogs, both as a pet dog trainer and as a service dog trainer. So I have seen this both in pet dogs of all breeds and all types and everything, as well as in quite a bit of service dogs who come to me for training. Now, what I want to talk about quickly is what is reactivity, because that's quite a big label. And we're going to use the label today. So a warning, we're using a label today. But when I say the word reactivity, I use it to encompass a huge range of behaviors that we can see in our dogs that almost always includes barking and lunging of some kind. So for a couple of examples is a dog who sees another dog out on a walk and starts to lunge towards that other dog and barks. Sometimes we see growling, sometimes we see other body language. There's a lot of body language that can go on in this. Sometimes we see, sometimes we see growling or snapping or other vocalizations. But whenever I personally use the label, because that is what this is a label, reactivity, I mean a dog who is barking and lunging towards a trigger of some kind. That trigger is generally other people or other dogs, but every now and then it is traffic or things on wheels, or every now and then it's something else. Cats is another trigger, but generally I see it be happening towards people or other dogs. Now, the first thing to note, of course I'm going to tell you this, is that if your dog is barking or lunging or growling or doing any of these behaviors, you have to stop public access. Your dog has to be pulled from public access training until you can get a handle on this behavior. Now, that is not always what everybody wants to hear. Some of you are going, yep, I've already done that, I'm right on board, and then some of you are going to be this is a little harder for me to sell. But if your dog is barking or lunging or growling or any other behavior that would fall under that lump label of reactivity, he has to be pulled from public access training until you solve the problem. There is no other ethical solution when it comes to service dogs. Now, the problem we have with the service dog industry in this country, in the United States, is where I am, so in other countries things go a little bit differently, but in this country you have the right to own or train your dog without any oversight. And what that means is that this is an honor system. Okay, this is a system where you as an owner trainer, it's just an honor system that you as an owner trainer will make the right decisions for your dog, for yourself, and for the public. So reactivity is something we have to take very seriously, and it means your dog has to be pulled from public access until you can figure out what's going on. Now, in my experience, reactivity happens for two main reasons. There are exceptions, but these are the two main reasons I see this type of behavior. One is dogs who are, about half the dogs that I've worked with are reactive, there's that label, because they are generally social and excitable, and they want to go say hi. So they see other people, they see other dogs, they really want to go say hello, they get really excited about seeing those dogs or those people, they maybe get frustrated that they're on a leash, and so we get this barking and lunging behavior. So sometimes this dog is very social, very friendly, all of these good labels, right? And we still end up with this barking and this lunging. The other half of the dogs that I have worked with are primarily dogs who are fearful. And they have learned that the best offense, or the best defense is a really good offense. That if they bark and lunge, people or other dogs will go away. That people will not try to pet a dog who is barking and lunging. So I have a couple of, I call them recovering reactive dogs in my own home. And one of them very clearly was this type of reactive. When I adopted him, he was 4, and he was barking and lunging at any human who made eye contact with him. The moment a human made eye contact with him, he would lunge at the end of his leash, barking in this very scary display. Now, of course, when we're talking about labels today, and I have lots of videos that talk about labels and how we need to be careful with them. Last week, I talked about going through the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, and the ABCs of problem behaviors, and so you're going to want to definitely watch last week's video if you're struggling with reactivity. Because in my Australian Shepherd, the antecedent, anybody who made eye contact, as soon as somebody made eye contact with him, regardless of how far away they were, we would have the behavior of barking and lunging, ears forward, eyes dilated, all of this, hackles up. The consequence was that person would go away. That person would stop looking at him and move away. So a lot of times, so in my experience of working with hundreds of reactive dogs, half of them are very social, friendly, happy, they want to go say hi, and it's turned into this big, exciting, barking, lunging display. The other half are fearful, and they have learned that the best way to keep that scary thing away is to bark and lunge at it. And that's how my personal Australian Shepherd was. Now, he's, of course, not a service dog. He was never going to be a service dog candidate. But he's a good example, and he's a dog I've lived with, so I speak about him a lot. So the other thing, though, these are the 2 primary reasons reactivity happens. The bigger issue here is that of all of the owners I've worked with, and all of the owner trainers I've worked with, and all of the service dog handlers I've worked with, most people don't know which reason their dog is barking, or lunging, or being reactive. I have a lot of owner trainers come to me who think their dog is social and friendly and just barking because he's excited. And what I see is a dog who's very fearful. Or I have owner trainers who come to me who think their dog is fearful. And oh man, my dog is fearful in public, and we've got to solve his fear. And I'm looking at just an overly excited adolescent who wants to go say hi to everybody. This is why you really need to see a professional. Somebody a qualified professional you can work with in person to help you determine which reason it is that your dog is being reactive. Because in a service dog, fear is a very big issue. Okay, we cannot ethically work a service dog who's fearful of the public. And regardless of why your dog is barking and lunging, it is still a safety hazard. And it is so again, if your dog is barking and lunging, you have to temporarily pull them from public access. Now, I have put 2 links into the description of this video that will help you find a professional you can work with in person. So one is IAABC, the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, and they have a good network of very well-qualified consultants that can help you with this problem. The other link I have put in there is KPA, so the Care and Prior Academy, which is also a great place to start looking for a trainer local to you. The one that I missed is, of course, you can go the route of a veterinary behaviorist, and that's going to be the AVSAB, so American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior. And a veterinary behaviorist can definitely help you make these decisions. So when I have a person come to me whose dog is being reactive, sometimes we solve the problem, the dog becomes a service dog. If sometimes the dog is a little bit fearful, we address that fear, the reactivity goes away, the dog becomes a service dog. Sometimes I have a dog who comes to me who's overly excited, loves the world, everyone in it, he's barking and lunging, we solve the problem, the dog becomes a service dog. Sometimes they don't. But somebody that you can see in person is going to be the best way to help you make this decision. Now, hold on, I've got some notes here because I don't want to forget anything. And the other thing about this is what I see a lot online is we have dogs who are being reactive in public or out on walks or something, and the justification is, I need to fix this problem because my dog would make a really good service dog. At home, she's loving, she trains well, she loves her job, she's already doing tasks. is I hear this a lot. At home or at the park, my dog is lovely and would make a great service dog. Unfortunately, most of the dogs on this planet are not capable of being service dogs. So when you choose a puppy or an adult dog, because adult dogs can make great service dogs, that's why we try to choose our puppies or our candidates so carefully, okay? So unfortunately, this problem, this barking and lunging, this is a big red flag, and it is a red flag that sometimes we work through and sometimes we don't. And the best route is to get the help of a professional. Now, there's a couple other resources that I wanted to go over with you guys today that can help you make some decisions, help educate yourself, and give you some training protocols that can help with this as well. Of course, I'm always going to tell you that a qualified in-person trainer is going to be the best. So a behaviorist, a consultant, a trainer who's qualified to help you is going to be the best route. But I did want to talk about some other resources as well. Now, the first one is going to be this book here. So this is Control Unleashed. This is her newest book, or newer book. So Leslie McDevitt has the Control Unleashed program, and I see this a lot in owner-trainer forums, so I know that you guys are familiar with this book. So she actually has two. I have them both with me. So I'm going to close this out. This is her older one, the Control Unleashed. This is the first one she did, and this book is fantastic, okay? Now, all the links to these are also in the description of this video, so you can find the links to all these books. So this is Control Unleashed, right? This is her original program. Then she has her second one, or her newer one, is Control Unleashed, Reactive to Relaxed. So you can see that the covers are very similar, but there is some difference here, okay? Now in this one, she has her FLIRT assessment. And she created this assessment to help dog trainers decide if the dog they're helping needs to be seen by a veterinary behaviorist. Now, we're going to talk about this FLIRT assessment for a minute. I'm going to move over because I think that it's a really helpful, valuable tool for owner trainers when you're trying to make some of these decisions, such as, does my dog need a veterinary behaviorist? Do I need to see a behaviorist? Does my dog need to be washed out? Things like that. Okay, so this is the book that this is coming from, Control Unleashed, Relaxed, or Reactive to Relaxed. Okay, so her FLIRT assessment has 5 components to it. The frequency of the behavior, the flexibility of the behavior, the intensity, the recovery, and the threshold. Now, we're going to go through all of these one at a time. But this assessment has these 5 components. And you guys, this is Leslie McDevitt. This is not me. I'm sharing a resource with you and that I think can be really helpful. I'm sharing a resource and a tool that I think can be really helpful for owner trainers. So her assessment has these 5 components to it. You go through each of these 5 components and you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest, so the coldest. 10 being the highest, or the worst, or the hottest. Okay, so frequency, for example, if we're talking about reactivity, a dog who barks and lunges when they see, we're going to go with another dog. That's going to be my example. Well, no, we'll do my Australian Shepherd because then I'll keep it straight. So we're going to go with my Australian Shepherd when I first got him. So the behavior is barking and lunging whenever another human makes eye contact with him. This is just our example behavior as we work through this, right? So I want to go through all 5 of these components and rate them from 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. So we'll start at the beginning. So frequency is how often does the dog do the thing, okay? How often does this behavior happen? With Gizmo, my Australian Shepherd, this was an 8. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, when I first got him, he was at an 8. If somebody made eye contact with him, 8 out of 10 times he was going to do a barking and a lunging, the reaction, the behavior, the thing, okay? His flexibility, is your dog able to respond to you when nearing their threshold? So I'm going to open my book because I don't want to screw this up for you guys because I think that this is really helpful. Okay, so the flexibility, so once the dog is nearing his threshold point, is he able to respond to you instead of going into a reaction? So again, 10 is the hottest, 1 is the lowest, so, or in this case. So mine was, again, Gizmo was probably at a 9. There was no flexibility in this behavior. When a person made eye contact, he was either going to bark or he wasn't. There was no flexibility in my ability to distract him with treats or redirect him or give him a known cue. Like, I couldn't say Gizmo and he would look at me. That wouldn't happen. The intensity of the behavior, so how intense is the behavior? Is it just does a stranger make eye contact with Gizmo and he goes woof, woof? Or do we have an explosion? His was at a 9. Okay, this dog was at a 9. It was a full-blown bark, 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 you know, the big eye contact, everything. He had everything. This was a massive display. This was very intense. His recovery time, how quickly does your dog recover after a reaction and go back to working? So how quickly can your dog go back to a normal training session, a normal interaction with you after a reactive episode? Gizmo's was like a 3 or a 4. He could pretty quickly turn it back off and go back to work with me. So he'd have his explosive reaction, and then really quickly he could come back to me afterwards, and we could go back to our walk or go back to our training session or whatever it was. And then I'm running out of room here. I got one more. There we go. Want me to just make some room. So then we also have the threshold. How fast does the dog hit the point of no return? Is it a 0 to 60 type of behavior where one moment your dog is fine and the next moment we have a full-blown reaction? Or does your dog take a little bit longer to get there? Okay, Gizmo, again, he was probably at an 8. So he would go from 0 to 60 very, very quickly. So my personal dog scores very badly on this test. We've got 8s, we've got 1 that is under 5. The rest are all at 8 or 9s. So he really needed to see a behaviorist. He needed the help of a professional to work him through this problem. Now, I got him when he was 4. I was not a professional trainer, but had a lot of training experience. We did go see a professional trainer to help me get this under control. And he is under control. The dog he doesn't do this anymore. But he still isn't a good service dog candidate for a variety of reasons. So a dog who has these very high numbers, there's still hope for these dogs, but a lot of times when we see very high numbers, it means that our dog is probably not going to make it as a service dog. Now, if I'm seeing multiple answers on this FLIRT assessment, on these 5 components, if I'm seeing multiple answers above, in the high range, 6 to 10, we really need to see a behaviorist. Okay, we need to see a behavior consultant, we need to see a behaviorist. It is much less likely that your service dog is going to be a good candidate. I'm not going to say impossible, because there are too many variables here. There are way too many variables for me to tell somebody whose dog I've never met, you, a person I've never had a conversation with. There is no way for me to tell you on this live whether or not your dog has to be washed out. What I can give you is this tool and tell you that if we're seeing lots of high numbers on this tool, there is a good chance you definitely need a professional. And there is still a good chance that your service dog is going to end up washing out. Not 100%, but a high chance, a high probability. If you're seeing some of those mid-level numbers, sort of 4 to like say 6, you should still, if you want your service dog to be a professional, or to be a service dog, if you want your dog to continue his training and you're seeing lots of 4 to 6s, then you still need the help of a professional. Okay, but it's more likely that we're going to be able to work through the problem. So this is just a tool that you can use to help you make some of these decisions. Now, if anybody has any questions about this, about the assessment, about making these decisions, go ahead and throw them into the comments, and we'll try and work through some of your questions. Now, of course, this is too big a topic for me to necessarily say, here's how you're going to fix it in 3 easy steps, right? Because this is a very big topic, and this is a very hard topic to talk about. But if you do have questions, go ahead and throw them into the comments, and I'm going to do my best to answer them. And while I'm waiting to see if you guys have questions, I just want you to remember a couple of things. First, this is a very big red flag. Reactivity is not something to wait on and see if your dog grows out of it, okay? Reactivity of any kind, barking, lunging, aggressive behavior of any kind, growling, snapping, fearful behavior of any kind, hiding, running away, you need the help of a professional, okay? Dogs don't tend to just grow out of these things without intervention. And I'm going to say 10, because, guys, these are all generalities. But in general, these things are big red flags, and we need to see a professional to help with them. Then, remember that there are lots of dogs who can be worked through this problem. Okay, so there are lots of dogs who can be worked through this barking behavior and turn into really great service dogs. So it's not hopeless. All is not lost, okay? But you need to take this seriously and you need to do the work to fix it. And that means that you need to pull your dog temporarily from public access. If your dog is barking, lunging, growling, fearful, any of these behaviors, your dog has to be pulled from public access until you can solve the problem. There is no other way around it. And then I've given you a bunch of resources. So look at, Leslie McDevitt's book, I didn't even give you all the resources. This was just one resource. Then we talked about the FLIRT assessment. Okay, so this is one resource, Control Unleashed. Her second book here, Control Unleashed, Reactive to Relax, has the FLIRT assessment in it. This is a fantastic tool to help you start making some decisions about how your service dog is doing with his reactivity or any serious behavior problem, to give you a label, okay? The other resources, books that I really, really like this is Laura's book, Fired Up, Frantic, and Freaked Out. This book does an excellent job of talking to you about reactivity, what it is, why it happens, how to help your dog. She lays out a protocol in this book. This book is really, really good. I have used this book a lot with a lot of clients, especially if you have done a consultation with a professional and they tell you that your dog is excited and social and that he is reactive because he is excited and social. I especially love this book for that. But again, you're going to need the help of a professional to help you decide whether it was fear or whether it's, I'm going to call it overexcitement, to give you another label today. But because this is a big topic and we're talking in lots of generalities, I'm using some labels today. So this book is fantastic, Fired Up, Frantic, Freaked Out by Laura Van Ardenonk. I always butcher her name a little bit, but I'm getting better. She's fantastic. I believe she still takes clients too, if anybody lives in the Indianapolis area. And then we have this one. This is Grisha Stewart's book, Behavior Adjustment Training 2.0. Now, she does have two versions of this book, or two versions. So her first Behavior Adjustment Training book is also fantastic. This is her newer version. And I have used behavior adjustment training with lots and lots and lots of dogs that I work with in person. So once a professional tells you whether or not the dog is fearful or the dog is overexcited, then this is the one I love for dogs who are fearful. I also love this book for proactive socialization, or for puppies or adolescents that seem to be going through a fear period. So if you have a puppy or an adolescent dog who's going through a fear period, I love this book. I think that it is extremely helpful for working your dogs through that. If you saw the live we did a few weeks ago on freedom walks, I first started doing freedom walks after reading this book when I was trying to adapt the protocol in this book for puppies and for management of loose leash walking. So I think that all three of these books are actually, I think everybody should have them in their library, but especially if you're working through any type of reactive or excited behavior. So you have a dog who gets too excited or something like that. Okay, so those are the resources that I really think will be helpful for you. They're all in the description of this video. The links to find trainers, these three books, all of that stuff. Okay, so I'm going to see if we've got some questions up here on the side that I can answer. And for anybody, I've got a couple of you who said you're late. The replay will stay up, so you can watch this from the beginning as soon as we're done here. You can as soon as we're done, you can just watch the whole thing from beginning to end. And here's a couple of questions. So one is, what if the barking, in my dog's case, only happens when at home? She actually does great when bested in public. So if it's only happening at home, I'm assuming it's some kind of alarm barking. The doorbell rings and your dog starts to bark, something like that. Then this book actually will help you a lot with that kind of thing. So Fired Up, Frantic, and Freaked Out can help you a lot with that type of behavior. So what I'm going to tell you here is that when we start to say that the reactivity only happens in certain circumstances, I'm still going to recommend you see a professional. Just do one consultation and make sure that your dog is alarm barking or excitement barking at home, and that the barking, again, to use two big labels for you, and that your dog isn't barking because he's fearful. So sometimes we do see dogs who display reactivity in only certain circumstances, but show fearful behaviors all the time. But the fearful behaviors are so subtle that their owners are not picking up on it. So one of the things is that, I wonder if I have this pulled up. I do. Okay. So let me see if I can pull this up really quick. And maybe not. One of the things about being an owner trainer is that you really, really need to make sure that you understand canine body language and the subtle signs of fear that happen before your dog will actually bark or lunge or do something else more dramatic. So I'm going to show this to you guys really quick. So this is the canine ladder of aggression. And let me see if I can, no, we'll just have to stick with it, the thing on the side. Okay, so this is not a perfect little demonstration here because I'm going to have to go up the ladder. But first, if your dog is feeling nervous about something, he's going to blink. So down here at the bottom, we're going to get something like blink, yawn, lick their nose, etc. Then we're going to get a head turn, something like where they turn away. They might turn their body away. This is where we get into some of this avoidance behavior where your dog actually tries to leave the situation. And then we start to see things like ears back, crouched tails, growling, snapping, biting. So what a lot of times happens, and this, when I was working with pet dogs, I saw this a lot. I would have a dog come to me who had just bitten somebody out of the blue. She didn't snap or growl, so they bit out of the blue. But really, all of these other things happened. We got head turning, we got walking away, we got ears back, we had all these other warnings before we had a bite. Now with service dogs, how this applies to what we're talking about today is that sometimes we don't see, because we're humans, these more subtle signs of fear, and they get ignored, and so our dogs start to get louder. So one of the things is if the barking and lunging behavior is only happening in one very specific circumstance, I would still, just to be safe, recommend that you have a professional come and help you out just once and make sure that this behavior is really just excitement barking because the doorbell rang. If it really is just because the doorbell rang and your dog is great and confident and happy in every other circumstance, I think that that's fine. But the only way that you're going to know for sure is to have a professional come out and help you out a little bit. Okay, so then we do have a question here about closed captioning, and I will try and write a comment for you. I am working on I'm working on adding captions to the videos, so stay tuned for all of that. Okay, so then we have, would an AKC trainer be a good person to know if it is friendly or fear? So here's the thing about any of these lists of trainers. Okay, so any of these lists of trainers where you can go look up a trainer, there is going to be a varying level of talent, knowledge, and education on all of those lists. Even the two that I am recommending to you, you're going to see varying levels of knowledge. Now, the reason I recommend the lists that I do, which is primarily IAABC and KPA, is because these trainers have to prove a certain level of knowledge in order to be credentialed by these organizations. So IAABC requires, they have a whole thing. In order to be a consultant for them, there's a lot involved in order to be a consultant for them. KPA is a 6-month course with testing at the end. So I recommend these two lists because I know that these two lists, in order to be on them, the trainer has to have shown a certain level of knowledge and education. And that is not necessarily the case on all the other lists. So for example, the APDT list, Association of Pet Dog Trainers, it took me there a second to figure it out, is a good list. You can certainly go there to look. But APDT is not a credentialing organization. There is nothing that requires those trainers to be knowledgeable or up to date or anything when they join that list. Now, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong here, but I think the AKC trainers list is the same. That there is no oversight as far as what the trainers have to know. So CGC evaluators, for example, aren't required to have a whole lot of experience or to have passed any specific test or to have taken any specific course. So there are probably lots of super, super fantastic and helpful trainers on that AKC professional list. But I don't know anything about how they got to that list, what they know about dog training, or anything like that. So I like to recommend lists to you guys where I know there's some oversight, where I know that the trainers and the consultants on the lists have to be at a certain level of education, of knowledge, of experience, things like that. So that is why I recommend that. Those two lists specifically. There was another list that I mentioned earlier that I have forgotten about already. But those are the two that I go to the most often when I'm trying to find a trainer. Or a consultant. Oh, the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior, that's the other one. Veterinary behaviorists are going to be very good. And then again, when we're talking about veterinary behaviorists, There are a lot of vets who know a lot about behavior and behavior medications, but are not board certified veterinary behaviorists. And so I think that it's important to make that distinction. So I personally, if I don't have a personal reference for you, if I don't know the person and I can't vet their level of education and knowledge and skills, I am going to recommend a list to you where I know that those trainers have been vetted. But again, there is still going to be some varying levels. So for example, the KPA list, which I'm a KPA trainer, I know lots of great KPA trainers. Not everybody on that list will help with reactivity. Some of them, it's outside of their what they do. Some of the trainers on the KPA list are not necessarily going to have the knowledge to help you with reactivity, but they will know that. They will know that that is outside their realm, and they will hopefully have a referral for you. Whereas the consultant, the IAABC consultant list, they're all behavior consultants. Cool. Okay, well, I guess that's going to be it for today. This was kind of a longer live. Usually we try to stick a little bit shorter because I know that I try to give you guys lots of good information without taking up too much of your time throughout the day. So if you have questions, you can always shoot them to us and our group, Train Your Service Dog with Confidence, although we don't talk about reactivity a whole lot because any type of reactivity, aggressive, or fearful behavior is not something that you want to be taking advice from just anybody off the internet. Reactivity can get better, it can be improved, it can also get worse very quickly, especially if you're using methods that are not appropriate for your dog. And what you need is a professional who understands the different methods and how to apply them to different dogs. So this is not something that you should be jumping on a Facebook group or on some type of forum and just taking advice from just anybody. This is the type of thing that you really want to find the right professional to help you with. All right, so I hope that I have answered some of your questions. I hope I have given you some tools and some resources that can be helpful to you. I know that this behavior is frustrating and it can be scary and it can be difficult, and deciding whether or not to wash your dog out is very difficult. It's a decision to make, but it's definitely, again, one that you should talk to a professional about first. But that's going to be it for today, so I will see you guys next week, and if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. Have a great day.